Y'all doing tonight? Thank you all for joining us. We have a great topic tonight. Can you guess what was found true about all successful relationships revealed?
Yeah, from a
Yeah.
study. It's actually a study that we're going to be looking at. So this is actually pretty cool because this study is live experience, right? From a more of a science background, actually putting experiences together to see what was in common with successful marriages.
Okay. Um, yeah, the study came from the PubMed Central published um,
Yeah.
study, and the results was this a six couple study? I thought
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
more
yeah.
than that.
Well, 12 people. This one was six couples. Now, you got to think when you're doing scientific research, especially when it comes to relationships, it's kind of be really hard to get all the analysis and long time of gathering data and stuff like that. So to actually have a smaller group is really good because then you can focus on, the details and getting a good analysis of the group. So although this is small, it's actually very promising because truth be told, it hasn't been too much research showing what successful relationships have in common. More often, we'll see a lot of research that's geared towards divorce and what causes divorce and, different behaviors that I guess in set up the end point of marriage because now that we're in the 20th towards the end of the 20th century, it's like, marriage, the end point is no longer death like it used to be. Did I say that wrong? Not
Yeah,
the
we're not in the
21st
20th.
century, 21st,
Yeah,
as we are in probably like the towards the end
20.
of, yeah,
We're in the
first.
beginning of the 21st
Yeah, I am
century.
not the best. Yeah.
The 20th century is the 1900s.
Well, nonetheless, in that time compared to now, it is so different because then the end point of marriage used to be death, right? So that was the end point of marriage, to death do you part. Now, statistically, we actually covered that based on the new data from 2022. Statistically, a lot of marriages are ending in divorce instead of being, death or widowed. So that's actually very unfortunate. And, it over the years has caused a rise in more studies geared towards, figuring out what's wrong, where did the couples go wrong, and, not so much focusing on the long-term couples that actually made it, right? And are actually happy. The focus is kind of on the doomsday, right? What went wrong. So it's nice to see an actual study that's talking about what went right, That really gives us the opportunity to further implement preventive measures and ways that you can recognize alarms, things, red flags, when things are going wrong and how you can go about correcting these things and making sure that you setting yourself up to have a solid marriage and a solid life together. Yeah, so this is a little, I guess, a bit all over the place. So we'll be first talking about, I guess, pretty much the participants. And the cool thing is they actually provided a table on their participants. So we're going to share the screen real quick. So just so you guys can see, it's really all right. I hope it comes up pretty good. Okay. So you have the females ranging again in age from about 44.7 years to 47.5 years respectively, right? So a lot of these are your older marriages, long term, and the average duration of these marriages was about 24 years. So they're studying legit long term marriages. And if you want to see like the common characteristics, or not common, but the individual characteristics of the participants, the women, midwife, homemaker, tailor, not too, specific, kind of all over the place as far as what these people did, their education and stuff, number of children and stuff. So other things that can impact, I guess, their perspective when it comes to marriage. But the cool thing about,
Retired. This is male retired at
yeah,
26.
that's nice,
Congratulations.
right? He was doing, he did something right. So, yeah, that's actually cool to actually see the participants that were in it. And it's so basically the way this study went was you're looking at these couples and you're pretty much asking them questions throughout their marriage, right? And they digitally record these questions. So, you want to see some of the? Do you see the questions? I don't want to be
What question? The
the.
questions
Mm-hmm.
are in the
Yeah.
interview. If you were to, how would you define marital satisfaction?
Mm-hmm.
And then continue with such questions as what factors contributed to your marital satisfaction?
Yeah.
What do you do to keep your partner happy and satisfied? So it's about being satisfied in your marriage.
Yeah, good questions. Now, these, of course, each interview lasted about 30 to 45 minutes. So they're pretty long interviews, individually, privately. So, it's separate from the spouse, trying not to, make it biased or anything like that. So that's a good thing. But where necessary, they also talked about having a second and third interview. So maybe they wanted to get a little more information, usually until they can fill up any potential gaps in information that, might be missed, maybe some follow-up questions and stuff, trying to actually gain analysis of all the couples together and see where, the commonalities lie. So, yeah, the next one, the cool thing, now we're going to get into, I guess, the results of all of this. And that is great. So they basically split this up into what they have is some main categories, three main categories in particular that they definitely say are the main things that contribute to a solid marriage. So their main categories started off with, the strong foundation for living together. And then they're split into the subcategories and subcategories that talk about, what established this strong foundation for marriage. So that we're going to get into each one of these specifically. But you can see mutual commitment to protecting marital cohesion and striving to improve sexual relations. Those were the top three. Surprise. Things that, determined the long-term satisfaction of a marriage and things that you could actually do. So let's break this down specifically, right? And see what these things really entail, these main categories. What do they entail and how can we use them to benefit marriages, relationships, and do make them last a lifetime and not, lower those divorce rates. So it's nice to have a study like this to actually see. So the first one, the strong foundation for living together, right? So from all these couples and their perspectives, what they found was that having a strong foundation starting off, which pretty much meant like the appropriate beginning of marriage and having all your ducks in a row, basically, before you get married. We kind of talk about that a lot, being prepared, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the things that you definitely need to have in place and ready to go before you get married will set a strong foundation. So let's talk about what those things are based off of this study. What do you see? Well, I do see that most participants reported that the conditions should not be made difficult for marriage. So that's basically saying when you get into your marriage or you get into your relationship and you're working towards your marriage, don't make it difficult for you to get married. That means don't put an extravagant price tag on a wedding that has to occur before you guys get married, things like that.
Yeah, it states here it should be based on. So marriage should be based on the ethical values of the couple. Excessive should be based on. I guess it should not be based on excessive demands.
No, they should be based on the ethical values for the couples and not based on excessive demands, formalities, luxuries, costly customs.
Okay.
Those things
Not.
should be
It's missing one.
minimized.
Okay.
Yeah. So the support, though, that the couples give each other is the main thing that should be maximized and shown to help throughout supporting a solid foundation for a marriage. What's interesting is that we actually have even some quotes from the study. So the 46-year-old man, he reported that, this is a quote. We started our married life in a room after a plain luxury-free wedding ceremony, and it was so lovely. Unlike some other families, I wanted to hold our marriage ceremony without the otherwise costly traditional ceremonies, right? So that was a big one. Actually, not having to take on that amount of debt in order to get married is one thing that started the marriage off in a solid, foundation. I guess probably because the man feels more comfortable entering the marriage.
Or
Um,
either just something that's private. That's what it seems
yeah.
like to me is just more so a private
Less costly though. You don't want a
ceremony.
$20,000 wedding. Like it's yeah, when it's private, yeah, it's definitely less.
It's more intimate.
Yeah, intimate and less costly too, which is a great advantage as well.
Right.
Another participant, he had said that it's important for, of course, customs to be respected in the marriages and, family traditions, things that each spouse has, for those things to be acknowledged and considered throughout the whole marriage. And especially starting off, when you're setting a foundation on how you're going to live your life.
So that's almost like the opposite end.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a traditionalist. So that means like the big extravagant wedding where both families are there. Observe
kind
family
of.
and ethnic traditions.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so much extravagant, but more so like things, if some couples have things like they light certain candles during it, or like jumping the broom, those things, like those are that doesn't have to be extravagant. Yeah, it's more so thinking of keeping up the family customs that a person cherishes deep within themselves, making sure that that is still carried on and upheld throughout a marriage, because that's the individual,
right? And that's normal. I mean, either you're gonna have a real small wedding, or either you're gonna have a traditional wedding, pretty much, or either some other alternative. What do they call it? The vacation weddings. People go on those too.
Yeah,
those are more extravagant.
Yeah. Those, I mean, again, this is subjective based off of the couple. So of course, if you can afford those great big weddings, by all means, have fun and indulge. But if it's not something that's actually going to prove to be good in the long run for your overall financial well-being of your family, then maybe considering, not taking on so much debt so soon.
My question is, how important is a marriage? I mean, a ceremony, rather, to some people. Some people like them. Some people don't care for them. They just want to be married.
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask viewers to chime in on.
Yeah, how much and how important is it?
Is it to you? Because it's, I mean, that's, depends on the person as well.
Yeah, it really does. It really, really does. Another good point that they made for setting a solid foundation is coming in agreement on those family traditions and those similarities. So similar lines of thought, similar understanding and consensus for like the important criterias of your life, like the things you want to do, how you want your life to look, where you want to live, how many kids you want to have, those certain things need to line up. And believe it or not, within the study, beauty wasn't really one of the big ones that persuaded a man to, get married. It played a part, but, I think like participant number 1, which was a 41-year-old woman in particular, she said that it was just the honesty that mattered to me. And as far as same class family is concerned, his family class was almost the same as mine. And it was important that we did not have many cultural differences. That is, we did not differ much in our line of thinking. So that really just shows like your mind and where you come in alignment really played a bigger part in the long-term success of your marriage than looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you see that in America too. You don't see a lot of, especially when it comes to religion, you don't see a lot of cross-religious marriages in America.
Yeah, and I wonder how a lot of relationships are coping with that too, because religion is kind of all over the place. Some people aren't super religious, some are.
One person has to decide what religion to pick. I've seen a show or something like that where one woman, her husband was Muslim, but she was like Jewish or something. So they had to pick a religion.
Wow, that is a big.
And I think she chose to be a Muslim wife, but of course, because it was the man, so the head of household
should make those decisions. Yeah, and you should definitely kind of come into of course, taking into consideration you and your lifestyle and your how hard set you are on your religious beliefs. Some people are more fluid, and that perspective, that woman obviously was more fluid.
Right. Well, she wanted to get married to that man, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the way it went. They had to establish all of that in the beginning. So that's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
Yeah. But once you have done that, I think you have really set a good, strong foundation. That's exactly one of those things. Having a strong foundation for the beginning of your marriage, and how it starts. So another one, which was really cool, was that, and it reminded me of you actually, because he said that, number 8 was a 46-year-old man. And he reported that he exactly remembers writing down my priorities and questions on paper. And even now, my wife still has the paper. I even got down to such details by saying, what kind of food do you like? What color do you like? At that time in our city, perhaps no one cared for those things, but I did. I had read books about it and I asked questions and she answered. So that's cool having those questions. Of course, we have given much
Deeper questions.
deeper questions than that.
Those are the
Yeah.
questions that you ask.
First date. Just to
Right.
break the ice.
I mean, for real, those questions that we asked, those should be your first date questions if you're really trying to date with the intention of getting married,
Mhm.
because that'll cut out the BS.
Yeah. And that would be knowing about like your cultural and religious background, knowing about your childhood, right? Asking questions all about that. What do you want your life to look like? Your vision, all of that is big questions that, definitely should be asked first, right away, and definitely coming into an alignment with that before you start your marriage is what solidifies a strong foundation for your marriage, because you are rooted and y'all know y'all principles and your values that you guys are going to stand on together.
And expectations.
And expectations. Yep, that's so true. So another one was modeling from others' marital relations. So this was super cool because it reminded me of what we're doing. So actually being able to, according to the participants, learning was based on experience and influenced by the parents or other relationships, and learning from other couples and how those experiences played a crucial role in the marital cohesion, right?
Yep. So it's always best to learn from experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's for everything. I mean,
Yeah.
when you try to put together some new furniture, it comes with a manual, but unfortunately, marriage doesn't.
Right.
The closest thing we have to that is the Wife-conomics wife school that my wife has established for women. So
because you actually get to learn and gain wisdom from the experiences of other women, what worked for them, what could possibly work for you. And of course, like with all of this stuff, relationships are very diverse in their cultures and their just their overall look of how a relationship goes for each person is kind of different. But the cool thing is there's these similarities, and in those things you can learn a lot from what somebody goes through, and also not make the mistakes, especially if they've made mistakes, so. And that's the cool thing about marriage too. It's pretty much like a unified consciousness in the sense of the behaviors and the conducts that need to be conducted in a way that you conduct yourself in, so that you're able to have a successful marriage, and do healthy behaviors that contribute to you being a team.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So actually, that is the second most important thing that was found to be a big part of why a marriage was successful, and that is having mutual commitment to protecting marital cohesion. So having that commitment, actively seeking out healthy couples and healthy examples for you to model after, and come into better understanding of how you can keep your relationship together.
Right. So what that indicates to me is that marriage is a job, it's a work, it's a challenge. So the realistic aspect of being in a relationship or marriage is the knowing and understanding that there are going to be some ups and downs, and being able to work through those, and understanding that we're not quitting on the marriage. That's one thing that everyone needs to affirm and understand about marriage, is that you don't get into it for no other reason, well, not no other reason, but you don't get into marriage with an option of quitting.
Yeah.
I understand like abusive situations and things like that. By all means, yes, I understand that. But you know, those irreconcilable differences where people say we just don't get along. If you're married, you need to figure out how to get along. You know,
Yeah.
that's the first thing.
And that's the cool thing about studies like this, because they increase our awareness on the behaviors that are healthy for the success of a marriage. And that is huge for us to know, because again, you can spot those unhealthy behaviors, work to correct them, and then implement preventive measures that can go as far as preventing you from getting a divorce, preventing the dissolution of your marriage because you've actively put in the work.
Right.
Yeah. And it all starts really with having a deep desire for marital cohesion and keeping it together, protecting that. And what was really cool is that a lot of these participants reported that they were greatly influenced by their parents' relationships. So that kind of goes right back to how we were saying your childhood plays a huge part on how you look at commitment and the things that you're willing to do, or even the thought and the mindset of if you're able to sustain a marriage long term.
Right. I mean, and also that goes deep. I mean, because when you think about especially single mothers out here, um, and with that being said, you all have to take that into account. The
Impact of your children.
the impact on being single and what that means to your children and what they look like as far as their habits and what they perceive marriage to be.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, it does. Some key things that each participant said what they were influenced by, particularly
By their
from their
parents.
parents, was their parents' mutual help, support, forgiveness, friendship, kindness, intimacy, positive interaction, and romantic relationships, and learned lessons from their mistakes. So that's a big one. That goes right into what you were saying about single motherhood. Believe it or not, it is so important for single mothers and single fathers to talk to their children about how they can prevent their children from being single parents as well, learning from the mistakes that you made, because you hopefully have learned some,
Right. And it goes on to say hardships and living problems, trying not to repeat such mistakes as not understanding each other, ignoring their demands, your spouse's demands, not meeting their sexual needs, and comparing your partners with others.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you could take one of these and just talk about it all day.
Yeah. But these are great points to learn from your parents.
Right.
And that's awesome.
But the problem, the problem we have in America is the fact that, half of us grew up with both of our parents, and then the other half grew up with just one.
Yeah.
So that, those values, we're missing a lot of those here,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, and how important that is to a long lasting marriage.
Yeah.
Is very important and is lacking.
Yeah.
And then, comparing, one thing, they talked about comparing their partners with others. And that, trying not to repeat such mistakes. That information, I didn't expect to see that there, because that's one that that kind of goes with body counts, because if you got a low body count or no body count, then you ain't got nothing to compare your partner to, or trying to explain that to your child,
right,
about those type of situations.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, but how many parents talk to us about meeting your spouse's sexual needs? I don't think that is communicated enough. Parents, mothers talking to their daughters about that, and fathers talking to their sons about that. We probably talk about, parents probably talk about, of course, helpmates, mutual help, supporting, all that stuff in the beginning: forgiveness, friendship, kindness, intimacy.
I think a big one that isn't talked about is not understanding your partner, because it's hard for a single mother to talk about how to understand men if she doesn't have a man that she's with and actively living with and building with and understanding, because that's what happens when you live with a man. You come to understand him. Same thing with women. Men, you come to understand women when you live with them. So it's kind of hard for single parents to offer that information to their children, but it's very important for us to put in their mind that, hey, you need to understand the roles of a man and a woman and how you can come together to form a great life together.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, single parents can't give that advice.
Well, yeah, but they can tell their children that, hey, this was a mistake that I didn't learn. Make sure that you take the time to understand your spouse.
Right,
And
but
when you get in a relationship.
that's as far as you can go.
Yeah, right.
Like,
That's it.
without, creating falsehoods.
But
And
that's really good though, because that's leaving a jewel. That's one of those things where you're learning from your mistakes and you're letting your children know, hey, like this was something that I didn't do. And I know that it is now important for us to do it. So,
find out how to get it,
and
talk
or
to them.
lead and guide them. Yeah.
Right.
Single mothers, introduce your children to like debutante, your girls to like debutante societies. That's where I started off learning about how to be a wife at a young age. So that's really a great start by introducing your children to other successful role models if you aren't able to be one yourself, just from experience. If you don't have the active life experience in having a successful marriage, letting your children have that opportunity to see what that would look like. So yeah.
What is this one quote from one of the participants? 54-year-old man. He reported that I learned about life and marital relationships from my parents. I knew what my mother wanted and said, but my dad didn't. They couldn't understand each other. That's why I always try to understand my wife.
Wow, that's a nice perspective.
Right. But you see, that's the type of interaction that children need to see in order to be consistent with marriage and relationships and not trying to quit the marriage and relationship, because we know when we want to, you should want to fight for your marriage. You should do everything that you possibly can to stay in it. And that's a great statement that he had said, that he saw that I knew that my mom wanted what my mom wanted and said, but my dad didn't. They couldn't understand each other. But the thing is, they were still married, so I mean, those type of things happen, and they're the old school couple. So usually the old school men, old school guys out there, they just think that I'm here providing this, and providing is enough. So just take it or leave it.
Right.
So that's what that's about.
And the women too would just stay by and take it and not be fulfilled.
Right.
Sometimes it could even result of you sleeping in separate
Separate
rooms.
beds.
Yeah.
That's like an old school thing too, having two beds in one bedroom, and there's mama bed and daddy bed. That's wild.
Yeah,
That's an old school thing.
That's toxic. I don't care how old it is. That is very toxic.
I mean, you've seen it in like them old movies or whatever. But then another thing too, like another, just an example. Like back in the day, before the internet and probably before telephones, or a man would have two families. And the mother knew about it, but she just, like you said, just stayed in the marriage.
Yep.
Which is crazy. But
yeah, so yep. Overall though, learning from others' experiences, the participants pointed out that they tried to acquire the experiences from the marital problems and success stories of other couples, modeling certain successful individual relatives and learning lessons from their strengths, failures, faith, proper raising of their children, modernness, studying and caring for the continued education, and to avoid repeating inappropriate behaviors, and socializing with couples with marital problems. So it really points how important it is to have a community, not only when it comes to raising children, but making marriage great again, in the sense of having a strong community of people that are supportive of marriage, and how a couple can, and helping a couple work through marriage, being supportive to understanding that, hey, marriages go through some rough patches. It's all about looking for and having help to be able to reach out to. so that you can work through your situations and, keep pushing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So another one, the couple's deep emotional relationships, according to the participants, loving each other and having a sense of belonging to each other created a deep emotional relationship between them. So that works on to one of the next parts, which kind of goes into also to building a good solid foundation as well, and then cementing it with wanting to protect your marital cohesion. You work to actually build a deep emotional bond with this person so that for the long term you are connected. And not just we'll get into the physical, but in the mental first, right? The mental, the emotional, the spiritual part. That's super, super important. Let's see. So, oh, this was cool. One participant perceived the love of the spouse as the factor for the stability of their lives. So that's quite interesting how people view marriage as a way to bring in stability, because I believe that's 100% true. Marriage creates a great avenue for creating stability within your life, especially if you're out here running wild in a single life. So, marriage will give you that structure, that discipline, that in a way, the consistency that helps build routines and establish you know, certain ethics and values that you operate out of. What do you think?
I mean, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, one another factor that they said that their love had not diminished or become boring over time, and rather that it even improved, and that their deep emotional relationship and how they really cared and loved for each other was not something that they had to verbally express in front of others, but they did make sure to do it within themselves. One in particular, one 45-year-old man reported about verbally expressing his love for his wife. He said, "I don't get embarrassed to say to my wife in front of her father, 'Come here, honey,' or when I come home and find her parents or my mom there, I don't get embarrassed to hug, kiss, or shake hands with her. Now I love her more than ever before." So it's interesting to look how in the beginning, that bond isn't as deep because you are a little embarrassed to do those things.
Yeah, I mean, that's just normal. I mean, it
Mhm.
grows. The fondness grows over time.
Yep.
The connection and the marriage grows over time. So that's just the example and what to look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Another good point that they made about being able to create a good foundation was just respecting each other's parents and all the view that you all had within your relationships, being able to respect that and also set up those healthy boundaries so that your love can deepen within your connection and not so much be stagnant based off of outside sources so much. So that's cool. Um, Let's see what else. This study was actually pretty big. If we go back, all of these are kind of the sub topics that go into those three main topics.
Yeah,
Um,
these are the detail, the
mhm.
micro details.
Yep. Another one for establishing a good foundation for marriage is having life skills for marital issues. That is a huge one and very much why Wife Economics was created. One of the many reasons why Wife Economics was created was to help establish life skills for marital issues, right? How can we support women first before they get married if we can get that, in the way out the way first, making sure that they are fully aware of the things that they can do, fully equipped with the tools and the resources that they can use to help their marriage when issues arise, and then also supporting wives after they have become married and those issues come up. We have specifically our private Facebook group within the Wife Economics community that is an actual wife support for wives so that they can have that support, a safe space where they can ask their questions and get some information and some tools and some wisdom from long-term wives on how, they can be successful and work through those marital issues, because that will make or break it, you know. Not having the life skills and issues like respect to each other's personality, supporting each other's growth and promotion, and endurance in debates and disputes result in marital cohesion. So that is awesome when building that bond between the man and the woman, just being able to work through those issues.
Mhm.
That's something we commonly talk about too, because you often say, we worked on one issue, and after having worked on that issue and worked through that issue, we can apply what we learned to the next issue when that arises, and you'll get through it faster.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like my strategy of reconcile, negotiating, and resolving.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And remembering, maybe you need to put in there something, maybe we'll
And
come up with a
repeat.
thought. Yeah, and repeat.
Rinse
Yeah.
and repeat.
Rinse and repeat, right. Yeah. Supporting each other's growth and promotion is huge, because I think that encouraging each other throughout life will really determine how much you grow, right? So if you're not supportive of your spouse, if you're not constantly encouraging them, well, I'm not saying you got to constantly pep talk them just to get out the house, but just being an encouraging ear and being able to speak life into your spouse is a great thing, because that can help your relationship grow. And seeing them get promoted and do great things is a promotion for you as well.
Right. That's instilling confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is so true. Another participant, a 39-year-old woman, she reported on ignoring each other's faults, that being a big one on creating marital cohesion, because she specifically says, the love between us is such that we see less of each other's bad qualities and we bring up each other's good works. For example, if I make a mistake, my husband will not tell me straightforward. Me, the same. We do not talk about it directly. He may tell me later what I did was wrong and that I shouldn't have done that. And I may be a little less patient than my husband, but he's not like me. He's never mentions my faults as they happen. He controls himself and talks about it in due course of time.
That's a good one.
Yes. We hit on that yesterday.
Good timing.
Mm-hmm. And being able to come and approach something in the right mindset.
How many people have that type of reserve to hold off and prevent an argument? Because that's what they're doing. They're preventing an argument by doing that. So,
and their spouse from feeling bad.
Right. So, you can, for an example, being at a dinner date and then your spouse says something you don't like, being reserved and ignoring those faults. Or either, your spouse saying something to the waiter that could be embarrassing to, both of you.
Mm-hmm.
But holding off and talking about that at a better timing can be, that's a great way to prevent arguments. And I like that example. I really do.
Yeah. I really like this too, that she says he controls himself, because that is a big level of control.
That's maturity.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I'm sure he sometimes he's probably like, God, dog, like did this really just happen? But
but also you see that all the time though. How many people have that much maturity and control over themselves to not just
flip out,
emotionally respond?
Yeah.
Right
away, right?
Right.
Yeah. When something happens, and to actually be able to have that mindfulness and awareness to say, wow, this just happened, let me take a step back to actually view everything from a broader perspective. It really also to help set the stage for furthering the resolution if it is a problem, a serious problem, because then you're not so much thinking, like she was saying, like, oh, dwelling on the mistake or the bad habit, but more so on like how you can address it so that the person you and your spouse can move forward. So that's big. I think that is so cool. So the third one, and believe it or not, I think everybody should know that the key to a long-lasting, successful relationship is striving to improve your sexual intimacy in your sexual relations. That's it. You really have to constantly grow to keep that connection, to grow that connection, to have fun with each other, because who else is he gonna be doing this with? Like that's who you're married with. That is literally the only person you're supposed to be doing it with. So who better else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this category describes the factors that improve the sexual relations. So it's awesome. These couples were able to give their key tips on what they thought helped to improve their sexual relations within their marriage that has lasted 25 plus years. So this is all wisdom that we all can take in. And so, from these couples' point of view, in order to strengthen the sexual intimacy, they recommended sexual education. And I was kind of taken aback by that a little bit, just because I never thought of having sexual education for before marriage. And I think it would be more so in the topics of, and little different than sex ed in school, right? So we're talking about more so of like how to please a woman, maybe learning the anatomy of a woman, learning the anatomy of a man, right? And learning different ways that you can do certain things to reach an orgasmic, pleasurable experience, things like that. That is what came to mind when I read sexual education for me. And I thought, wow, that is really good.
Yeah, but who's teaching that?
Exactly. I don't know. But maybe there are some, those intimacy coaches in a way.
No, it was. It was like it was this old lady. It was this old lady named Sue Johansson that would be on TV. I think she was being like on HBO or something. And people would call in.
Wow.
And she was like a sex ed coach for couples and adults and stuff like that. I remember that being young, just seeing that, because I'd be sleeping on the couch. And next thing I know, this old lady on TV, and then she's talking about sex. And then I was like, this is crazy.
But it was actually beneficial for marriage and like the long term.
Her.
Yeah, so that's so cool. That's I see the vision. That's what we're gonna be. Big like that. Call us in, talk about the marriage.
I mean, she talked about everything.
I know, but that's what we kind of hit on, like all types of things for marriage. But that's a cool point to note, like sex education before marriage, and not in the sense of what we learned in school.
Yeah, because like, with sex, dealing with sex in a relationship and a marriage, you need to be comfortable as possible. Mm-hmm. If you develop every area of your relationship, why not the sexual part of it?
Right.
Meaning that both, wife and husband are feeling ultimately pleased and having a pleasurable experience when dealing with sex.
And constantly improving that. That's a big one. Not even just like, because once you reach that peak of satisfaction, okay, how can you reach it again? And how can you reach it again? And again and again and again, in ways that can heighten that connection.
Mm-hmm. Because it's just like, it's another form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get better at communicating sexually with your wife or your husband, so that, someone's not feeling left out, or like always wanted to try this, or why we never do this. Because often at times, sometimes your spouse may be shy or timid to even talk about it or bring it up.
Yeah.
So,
or not aware. I think about how many men are actually aware of the anatomy of a woman and how to use certain, body parts to bring about an orgasm and stuff like that.
And then paying attention, because young guys, we're all in it trying to get our orgasm, and we don't know that, a lot of times we don't know how to make a woman orgasm,
right?
Or what it takes to, or having the stamina to trying to get her to orgasm, to be honest with you.
So, and that can be learned. In fact, that's what this study pointed out. So we're actually looking at
it takes practice.
And then that's what they said, though, within this study, is actually having that practice and engaging in that and having those experiences so that it can strengthen the sexual intimacy. Because believe it or not, that is the top one for when it comes to having a successful long-term relationship. So another one was trying to meet each other's sexual desires, right? So that kind of goes back to even having the conversation about it, not being afraid to talk about, hey, honey, I like it like this, or I like to do this, or I want to try this, not being cut off and closed off to those experiences too, right? Yesterday, we talked about sneaky little behaviors that could ruin your relationship. And in fact, being closed off to new experiences was one of them.
Not open-minded. Yeah,
Yeah,
open-mindedness.
and that involves sex. So maybe you don't necessarily haven't had this thought about doing something like that, but your wife or husband has. Be open to trying it with them and just seeing, I'm just saying, like, if if your spouse likes it and you don't, that has to be something that you can continuously do. But if that problem does arise, talk about how you can then make it pleasurable for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. Another thing, so the participants, when they were talking about sexual preferences, they expressed that they shared their sexual preferences with sincerity, honesty, and far from compliments. And in this regard, they expressed their satisfaction and their dissatisfaction with each other, and they expressed their expectations from each other. So, women, if you're not orgasming in your relationship with your husband, don't fake it. That's not sincere. And that's certainly not going to get him to know that he's missing the mark, right? So be open, be honest, have that communication and say, hey, this isn't working. Let's try this. Let's do this. I want to do it this way. It's kind of like women in a way we kind of think, oh, a man, because they're so sexually active, more so should be than the woman, that they should be more experienced. But believe it or not, I think it was one study that I read. In fact, a lot of men, especially now in this digital age where they're not going out and talking and stuff like that and meeting women,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot more men virgins that aren't aware of the things that you can do in the bedroom or how to even bring on arousing a woman. They just swipe left or right, I guess.
No, but no, that is a good point, because you said that men, there's that communication.
Mhm.
So you need to be able to communicate what sexual acts you like,
Mhm.
and be able to feel comfortable in talking to your spouse about that. Say,
Mhm.
hey, honey, like,
Yeah.
I ain't trying to be too explicit about it, but
Yeah.
let's try, can we
Let's try
try
that.
this?
Mhm.
And then after that, can we do this? And then do that. Because
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's not just, one person getting fulfillment out of it,
Mhm.
but also too, it's an experience.
Mhm.
Sexual experiences are big, in a marriage, in a relationship, or it should
Yeah.
be, because, like my wife said, that this was one of the biggest parts of the study, was that how the
Improving. Mhm.
participants wanted to improve their sexual um, performances, and also their sexual satisfactions for their spouses.
Yeah.
So have that open mindedness, and have that, have those conversations about sex,
Yep.
because it helps in the bedroom.
Yep. Yep. And it was cool because they even, the participants reported that they even enjoyed seeing their partner satisfied. So that's a huge one too. If you're in a relationship, especially if you're in a marriage, you should enjoy seeing your spouse climax. You should enjoy seeing that and actually want to see it more, right? So that should turn you on and keep you involved and engaged to where you're like, hey, let's do this again in the next part. And the cool thing about the sex hormones within the mind is that when you keep having sex and you keep it going, you actually build up like a intensity to where you want to have it more and you want to keep going and you want to keep doing it. So
Yeah,
that can,
those are the drugs, the
yeah,
brain
yeah.
drugs
But that's great for like
on the
women
brain.
who may not have a high sex drive like their husband, right? A great remedy for that. And I actually talk about this within my wife economics course within the 6 week when we talk about sex is, hey, if your sex drive is much lower than your husband, if you can get him to actively get you involved and pleasured throughout the experience, you will come back wanting to do it more and more. Your brain just will make those chemicals and you will crave that connection and want to actually do it. And as a result, increase your sex drive right along with your husband, which overall will create a great sexual relationship between you guys and a bond that you can see grow over time. So that's just one cool point to make. Another one that we kind of hit on yesterday too, when we talked about keeping up with your appearances, right? Your self-care, that's super important, and a bad habit if you don't do that, that can ruin your relationship. But if a spouse makes themselves attractive to their partner, that increases the sexual relationship and actually you're bonding, your connection, actually caring about, hey, does my partner find me attractive?
Right.
Am I keeping him sexually excited about me, by just looking at me and how I carry myself and stuff. So that plays a huge part.
Right. You talk about physical fitness,
Yep.
of course, hygiene, taking
Mm-hmm.
baths, putting on makeup and perfume for
Mm-hmm.
women
Yeah.
are effective in improving attraction during sexual relations. I like that.
Yeah. There's different things. And then these things also make you feel good, right? So what women doesn't feel good when you put on something nice and you smelling good, you just had a nice bath and stuff, setting the mood. I also talk about
Right.
this within the wife economics course is if you also know that your sex drive isn't up with your man, being able to know the things and having a routine that can help you by yourself get yourself in the mood for having relations with your husband. It's okay for you to take on that initiative of jump starting, those feelings, right? How can I get myself to feeling like doing this, right? Maybe that means taking a bath, relaxing in the bath, feeling good and relaxed, coming out, massaging some oils and stuff like that, putting a nice outfit on, doing your hair, smelling good. All that stuff can really make you feel like, feeling a little frisky and trying to do a little something. So, yeah, those are just some great tips when it comes to just overall keeping your relationship satisfied sexually in particular, because that's a big one. Again, it kind of goes back to the importance of sexual education. So the study regroups back into how you need to gain sexual knowledge and get even sexual training before marriage life.
Hmm.
That is so cool. And that's kind of, again, what we were talking about, taking the time to figure out, like, okay, what are the different parts and the different things that I need to know about, and even the squeamish things that may occur during sex, so that I'm not embarrassed when they do happen or if they happen or whatever, getting yourself comfortable. For me, I guess because it's kind of close. When I think of sex, I think of giving birth in a way. So the connection between the woman, I'm speaking to
What?
our woman here. Yeah, I'm speaking to my woman here because believe it or not, giving birth and that connection to the orgasm is very, very close, especially when the woman has taken the time to prepare her mind and stuff for birth. I'm talking about natural birth. I had 3 of them. So believe it or not, it really is a great connection that you can pay attention to if you, one, get the knowledge of how does my system work? What is the things that I can expect so that when they happen, I'm less fearful, I'm less embarrassed, I'm less squeamish, I'm less, struggling with the experience. I'm more aware of what could come up. I'm more aware of what's going to happen next. I'm more aware of the things that I could do to help it, right? So relating that again back to sex, having all that awareness and all that further knowledge of your body, of your systems, of what's going to happen next and the things that could possibly happen will really help you both be more comfortable.
Right. I mean, and then also too for women, sex is really mental.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot mental. So a lot of women don't know that, they probably don't know that, that the
Yeah.
orgasms are, they have to focus on the mental part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for a man, to be honest with you. Like, I can't, orgasm if I'm thinking about sports or, tasks or chores or something.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So
Right.
it really does take that focus and that awareness
Right.
to, seek that pleasure during the sexual experience.
Right. Can we say these words on YouTube? We don't even know, we're new, but whatever,
Yeah, you
y'all.
can.
Y'all gonna get this info tonight. So it's okay. All right. So yeah, so another one is talks about how gaining sexual knowledge, many of the participants stated that they do not have enough knowledge about sexual issues and also that they do not have access to valid educational resources.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, well, who's teaching that, right? Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly what you were saying. Yeah. That actually makes me think about adding on a little more to the wife economics course, because we get into sex, and this study actually gives me a whole new perspective on maybe getting into talking with more of the wives about how they could open up the conversation with their man on sexual education within a marriage, especially in the early stages or even before you've gotten married, because we often talk about how important it is finding out sexual compatibility before you get into a marriage. That's a big one. I know some people are saying, oh, that don't, you don't need to know that for sure. If you marry your person, you want to wait until marriage and all this other stuff. But yeah, I mean, sexual compatibility is a big thing. And if you guys aren't compatible, are you open enough to find out what you need to be and need to do in order to get compatible.
Right.
Yep. Oh, a quote. I got a quick quote from a 52-year-old man. He was number 12 in the study, and he said, quote, "I didn't have enough information about sexual relations early in marriage, and there was nowhere for me to go get training. So I couldn't ask anyone for it because I had shame until I found a family counselor and got some information for him." So that just shows like it's a need for us to not just talk about it, sex ed in school, on the simple side of it, the diseases and all the great stuff, but the deeper side of it when you're married, right?
Yeah, sex ed in school is not sexual education.
No.
It's supposed to be a sexual deterrent. That's what that's about.
Yeah. Then
So we don't have sexual education.
I don't know how effective that is with deterring anything. It's like the DARE program, right? Like
all you're doing is introducing it.
Right. Yeah.
But
or
it's not really
scaring the crap out of the kids. Yeah.
It's not really sexual education.
Right. And then, of course, I honestly believe kids are too young for that. I do believe that should be something that maybe is introduced into adults. Like, that would be nice to see in college courses. We got college courses for feminism. Let's petition for...
They got human sexuality courses.
I mean, but like relationship building sexuality courses, like where you're actually not just exploring your own individual sexuality, but exploring sexuality with your spouse. And how
those are called extracurricular activities.
Well, yeah, okay. That is true.
So you just take what you learn from class and apply that to your extracurricular.
That is true. And talk about it at least.
Activity.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, that was one of the top things that a lot of these older married couples suggest. Get sexual training for married life. I mean, dude, you're going to be together for so long. You're talking about having premarital training.
But where you get that from, that's the thing. It's not something that's prevalent. I mean, you probably could look it up in YouTube now.
Yeah.
A sexual coach. Yeah. They got those. Yeah, they do. They got sex coach. I mean, or either, just find some sort of, like erotic material or something.
Yeah.
Those possibly can teach you as well.
Yeah.
But I think they do have, sex coaches on the internet now.
Yeah.
So they're available. They're out there.
Yeah. And another part of that whole gaining sexual education for marriage would be also so that you can understand the hormones and the life experiences that could play a part in the up and down of your sexual relationships through your marriage, right? And understanding like, hey, even especially having kids or like menstruation issues or different things like that could actually put a damper on your sexuality and how you as a couple can come and work through this, right? Not allowing it to stall your relationship and your marriage, because sex is important and you need to keep that going and you need to know how to work through those issues, right? So yeah, that is a big one. So when we're talking about all of our viewers, thank y'all for joining in. We're talking about our top 3. Well, it ended up coming down the 3 things that this study had looked for successful relationships. So the first one was having a solid foundation for marriage. The second one was having the marital cohesion, the commitment to marital cohesion, right? How you guys stick together. And the third one was your commitment to improving your sexual relationship. So that was a huge 3-part factors that they broke down into these subcategories that we're kind of trying to dive into a little bit too. But another part for when it comes to having a strong foundation for living together is actually being able to create a good match with the adequate information of, hey, how do you want to live your life? How do we want this to look? And let's physically sit down and write out our roles of what we're going to play throughout this marriage, and having that understanding and that foundation of, hey, this is how I want this to go. This is how I want sex to go. This is how we want this to go. And our commitment to creating that marital cohesion of, hey, these are the things that we're going to always do so that we can stay together. So that's kind of how it all ties in together. But the participants believe that a good match was being well informed by your prospective partner. So that's not even saying that, oh, you have to have this checklist of things that you want your marriage to look like before you get with the spouse. It's more so saying, can we come together and talk about it from a group perspective, in a way of what are we going to pick and choose from, and how to create it as a team. So that was another cool thing that the participants showed. They said that it had a lot to do with shared intellectuality and similar lines of thought, having similar educations, having a moral commitment, right? So this is like where faith comes in. If you don't, some religions don't believe in divorce, right? So do y'all have that alignment, right? Also, your interactions between your families, and if they are desirable, all of that will contribute to whether or not you're going to have a good, strong foundation of it. Also, to the similarities and personality traits, that being a huge one when it came to as you can see, all the subcategory and the factors, the individual and family similarities that played into with a couple being a good fit in marriage. And then another going into the mutual commitment to protecting the marital cohesion, modeling from others. This talked about being influenced by the parents and learning from other couples' experiences and loving each other. So all of that built in kind of a mutual commitment to protecting the marital cohesion. And then, of course, having a sense of belonging to each other. That was a good one. Just having that sense of, hey, we're going to do this together and actually stick it out, together as a way. Another one, I'm trying to just go through all these, the participant quotes is whatever I can really see as being great points to make. But when it came to the long-term marital satisfaction, it included loving each other and showing that intimacy in the most valuable aspect that person desired. So that goes into knowing your person's love languages, right? Supporting that, having respect for that person's personality, strengthening that support in their growth of who they are and the things that they desire and stuff. So all of those things are super, super important when it comes to building up that marital satisfaction. Another quote that one of the men said that, men feel more powerful and more satisfied when they feel that they have the love, concern, and care from their spouses. So, of course, that evidence will suggest that overall, if you can contribute to these behaviors, these healthy behaviors, and connecting with your spouse and supporting your spouse, that the man will, for women, in return, reciprocate and want to protect, support, and, care for you as well.
Right. And so that shows for the man, the inspiration comes from his wife. So that's the dynamic of the marriage, is that men perform well when they have a compatible spouse who's his helpmate, someone who wants to show that they love, concern, and care for that man. So it keeps them satisfied as well. So
yeah, and to end this all off, research findings confirm the fact that if you can receive training for the life skills of having an effective relationship, increasing the marital satisfaction through hopefulness, through successful awareness, coping with stress, your cognitive abilities, and helping each other obtain their life goals. So it talks about having the skills to work together. And that is all what wife economics was all about, recognizing that wives and women that wanted to be wives, we didn't have the skills to be in full understanding of first our roles and what we're getting ourselves into. I commonly hear a lot of women come to me and they say, I did not expect marriage to be like this. Like I did not expect things to be, that's just the number one. I did not expect things to be like this. Like they didn't know what they were signing up for. And knowing that, like I think you mentioned that earlier, it's a job.
Right.
And you need skills. Right. You really do.
Yeah. I mean, you don't just show up to work.
No.
Nobody gives you a job based on, your looks. It's based on your merit and your skills.
Yeah.
And the way that you perform that job relies on your experience and your resume. So your past experience and how well you can do that job.
Yeah.
And So that's how marriage is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. This was a great study. Again, I'm going to actually link the study. Was a super long study, but I will go back into our description and link the study for you guys to see, because I learned a lot from this study, and I think a lot of other people will too. In fact, I've actually thought of some things that I want to again add into the Wife Economics course. Was the week about sex, like a little more sex education. That is big. I didn't think so much about that. Like getting, I talk about the importance of sex and all this other stuff and how to, of course, go into pleasing a man, but I didn't get into sexual education of how you can teach your man as well, because it's a lack of education out here for men too. So that is a great thing that I am excited to get to work on. So yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, we really appreciate the participants that not the participants, but the viewers out there. Thank you all for joining the show. And if you can, please share, like, and subscribe.
Yeah.
And until next time, you all have a wonderful night. Good night. Peace.